Tyrone,
Yo.
it's been a while.
It has been.
The listeners don't know the difference,
No.
just because we've still been releasing every week, but this is the first time we've been back together.
Like 3 weeks?
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks.
Since before Christmas.
Yeah, because I know you don't want me to tell people this, but we had to switch studios and
Ruined it. I was going to see if anybody actually noticed
Yeah.
that like you're sitting in front of the wood wall.
I'm the wood wall guy now.
Yeah.
You're gonna be the sign guy once we put it up.
So we get it. What we should have done, honestly, I was thinking about this on my way here, was you know how like some of the Barstool podcasts, they just have like the awkward dude in the background eating ice cream.
Oh yeah.
We should have some just awkwardly holding the sign for the whole episode. Just don't mention him at all.
That would be good.
Just literally just stand there and hold
Although
it.
that thing's a tank, you'd have to get somebody pretty jacked to hold that thing up.
Yeah, well, Rogue's doing what that plate challenge where you got to hold a 45-pound plate
That's
out.
right. They sure are.
Yeah.
Did you enter that? Did you do it?
No, gosh, no.
They did this last year, maybe
Yeah.
even the year before. But last year I know for sure because they did the Echo Bike.
Yeah.
And that was the only one I tried just on my own, just on a whim, and it was horrible.
I question some of
Horrible.
those results.
Well, yeah. The guy that won it did it in, it was
28
50 calories and did it in 21 seconds.
21?
21.
I thought it was 28, and I thought 28 was
No,
unrealistic.
it was 21. And
I
I
can't
watched the
even
video
get-
and I didn't see, it didn't look like he was going that
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, and,
crazy.
like, so you and I did it
Yep.
on the last Saturday suffering that we did, and I don't think I got a calorie until like
10
7
seconds in.
seconds,
Yeah.
7 or 8 seconds.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a setting we're missing that I've had the bike for 3 years and I've never seen this setting. I don't know.
So I just at 21 seconds. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
didn't
know.
make sense. So anyway, new studio, new
Yeah.
song that we introduced this year came into.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. Yeah, lots of new changes. 2023, new year, new us.
Hey, that's right. We set so many resolutions, and we're all about just starting at the new
Yeah,
year.
that's right. That's right.
Making promises that will last until February.
That's right. We're gonna over promise and under deliver.
Yes,
That's what we do around here.
Yeah, we're just trying to fit in, guys.
That's right. But what's happened since we last met? A lot of things happened, but
Yeah,
what's happened? I think about our boy Darren
yeah.
and his big news.
Come on,
Yeah.
come on.
So Darren, for those of you who don't know, he was just voted a finalist
Yep.
for the Hall of Fame. First time he's ever
First
been
time
voted a finalist. He's been a
in-
semifinalist for like 15 years.
yeah.
But never this far.
So his last season was what, 06?
I was just thinking about that. I think so.
So eligible I remember it was 05.
It was around there.
Okay,
Around
so
that time.
technically you're not eligible until your 5th year out.
I was going to ask you how long it
Yeah,
takes.
so 5 years out, and then you become eligible.
So let's just say 2009 he was eligible, or 2010.
Yes.
So that's 12
2010,
years
12
he's
years.
been
Yeah.
waiting to hear his name called.
Yeah.
Again, he's gotten far. He's gotten to the semifinals.
Yep.
But this is the first year he's gotten to the finals, which is 15 people,
Yep.
15 former players, and then they'll
Up to 9.
vote up to 9 that actually make it
Yeah.
to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And honestly, like, look, I'm not just going to say this because I'm a Darren homer, but it's been a frustrating since I've gotten to know Darren, right? And I grew up a 49er fan. I've mentioned it multiple times. So I knew about the Cowboys more out of dislike than it was like actually like watching them to enjoy it. And what I learned when I got to know Darren is I missed out on some unbelievable play. Like what he accomplished on the field was just remarkable. I mean, the all-time leading tackler for the Dallas Cowboys. So anytime you are the franchise leading tackler of all time, especially an organization that has the history of the Cowboys, like that's an automatic. Like that shouldn't be a question.
Even
Like-
just I've heard that. I know that stat, but
Yes.
even just hearing you say it is pretty wild.
Which okay, and I got to go back and look it up. But my guess is that probably puts him in the top 50 all time tacklers. My guess,
Yeah.
because I can't imagine. 32 have him being the 32nd leading tackler of all franchises. Now, again, there's organizations that maybe are more congruent to tackle, whatever. But top 50 is a guess, maybe not. Top 100 for sure. But like, then the amount of all Pro Bowls, all Pro votes, 3 Super Bowl rings. And that's not even, which unfortunately voters typically don't weigh into it, but like just the type of leader and player he was in the locker room. Like, y'all have gotten to know him if you've listened to us for any amount of time. I mean, the fact that he has not in up to this point, and the fact that this is his first time as a finalist is a crime.
Right. Yeah, and he's talked about this a little bit, that, you know, the way he played and what he was asked to do changed the position.
Yep.
Was a relatively unknown way to play, the way that he played safety.
Yeah. And
so, because he was a linebacker in college, which is crazy to think that he was a linebacker, then moved to safety in the pros and played 13 years. And so, and he, again, like Tyler said, if you've known Darren for any amount of time, listen to this podcast, he's the last person that's going to raise hell publicly, which may hurt him a little bit.
Well, and that's what I was going to say.
And he knows that. He's well aware. That's just not who he's not a self-promoter. Yeah. He's not going to get out there in front of this and really make a case for himself.
Which I didn't understand, and this goes back to me just being naive about that whole thing. Like, even in high school, it was like, I used to say, I'm not going to go to these camps. I'm going to let my game tape speak for itself.
I thought the same thing.
Nah, you have to go promote yourself. Right. You have to get in front of, you have to do this whole deal. And the same thing for the Hall of Fame is there is like a whole, like, so a lot of these guys, like, they'll put marketing teams together to go market them to whoever the voters, right? Getting out there, whether it's social media or out in the public or whatever it may be. And that's not his personality. His personality is like, listen, Darren does so much that people have no idea. That, like, close friends of his have no idea what he does, because he's not going to go advertise how great he is, how good he is. He's going to let his impact speak for itself. And, you know, one thing that I actually just heard this last weekend, and you talk about, and this is kind of relating to death and legacy. And we went through this in the comfort crisis and being comfortable with it. But one thing, you know, that it's really important is when you die, and this is out of the Bible, out of Proverbs, is when you die, a wise man is more concerned with his name than he is with what he has, right? So when you are wise, you are more worried about the name that lives on beyond, as opposed to the accolades, the possessions, you know, money, things, right? And Darren's that to me. Darren's that guy that is more worried about the impact he makes and the people he's interacted with. And dude, like, you talk to anybody that knows Darren, it's like, that's one of the best dudes I know. Yep. One of the best dudes I know. And he's more concerned with that. Yes, the Hall of Fame would be great. It would be awesome. But if for his mindset, and maybe internally it bothers him a little bit, like, how could it not? Yeah. But man, he's so much more concerned with his name and who he is and what he's represented as a person than who he is as a football player.
Yeah, and he and DeMarcus Ware, who is also a former Cowboy, this is his second year. He's a finalist as well. They had a press conference last week, and Darren mentioned this, that he didn't play the game for personal accolades. And some people say that. A lot of people say that.
It's easy to say.
And it's easy to say. It's the right thing to say. But with Darren, you actually believe it. And that's how he played. However, he's a competitive dude. He wants to win. Yes, publicly he's not going to say this, but privately, yes, he wants this honor. Yeah, just like anybody. And how could you not?
Exactly. What it does a lot of times is it just affirms what you've given up. It affirms that it was worth it.
And that's exactly what he said. I don't know did you hear? You didn't see. So that's exactly what he said. He said,
"Serious?
You want all those early mornings, late nights, all that work to be validated." Yeah. And yes, he validated with championships. He validated with being an all-time tackler. Yeah. But it's also nice to be validated through an honor like this. And so again, he won't go out and say it, but I know it means something to him. Yeah. And so we hope that this. In fact, he's going to be. So we're going to be out there at Super Bowl again this year with Sleep Number. Yeah. And the same week, they're having all the finalists out there, and there'll be some media obligations and things like that. So talking about he doesn't like to promote, he'll have some obligations while we're out there at the Super Bowl. And I think they announce, in fact, on the February 9th, right before the Super Bowl. So there's a very good chance we'll be out there in his hometown.
You know what we should do,
by the way,
is we should just like hang out in his hotel room all the time.
Just wait till they knock on the door.
Because we're the president when they knock on the door.
I'll answer the door.
Just to get some camera time. Just wearing our one-shot T-shirts.
Seriously.
We'll promote the heck out of each other. Darren, not so much.
How cool would that be? In his hometown, yes. He gets the call. So you know, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. It's eerie how it's waited this long, and now he's back in his home state.
So here's our ask: if you're hearing this at any point, and it is before the end of January, there's public vote. There's the Associated Press votes. There's a whole committee, right? It all goes into it. Like, if you have any influence at all, or if you have a computer, go vote for Darren. Like, get on. He is, again, not only is he, in my opinion, I mean, you got Darrell Revis, you got Rondé Barber. In my opinion, can't hold Darren's jockstrap as it comes to what Darren did and accomplished.
Yeah,
I mean, Darrell Revis doesn't have a Super Bowl. He was a good corner. He was, Revis Island. He did a lot of things, but like Darren for 13 years, absolutely dominated the sport every year that he was there. Mm-hmm. Like Darrell Revis had a peak. There was like 5 or 6 years where he was really good, which nowadays as a corner is great. It's awesome, but like. To say that he played at the level that Darren played with for as long as he did, I think that's doing a disservice to Darren. But everything that he did, going, coming in playing the run, going the slot, covering guys, playing deep at safety. I mean, whatever he did, he was great at.
Yeah.
And so I just look at it and I'm like, okay, there's all these safeties that have gotten in before. They're great safeties, great players, but like not even the same caliber.
Yeah. And I tell Darren this all the time. Having said all that, he's not even the best Woodson to ever play safety. So
don't do it. Don't you do it. Don't.
I used to tell him when I was his trainer, I used to tell him, man, I thought I was getting to train Charles Woodson. This is Darren Woodson guy.
You mean Rod?
Or even Rod Woodson. He's not even the second best Woodson to ever play safety. So, just kidding. Darren, we hope that he makes it this year.
Yeah.
It'd be a huge honor if he got to hear that and receive that honor in his home state, in his hometown. Mm-hmm. And you best believe we'll be in Canton, Ohio this fall if he doesn't make it.
Come on.
So. And speaking of Sleep Number, as we mentioned, we'll be out there here in a few weeks for the Super Bowl. We'll be doing their whole media week. They've got a bunch of cool content that they do with their athletes and their players. And it was an honor to be a part of that last year, and they asked us to come back. I guess we did an okay job, so they asked us to come back. So, but we do want to thank Sleep Number for not only that opportunity, but just the support they show us.
Yeah, what they're doing.
For this podcast. And again, I traveled over New Year's, and it just literally every time I travel to a new place, it just reinforces the fact that Sleep Number is the best, highest quality mattress out there. No matter where I sleep, I'm always 100%. Like, God, I got to get back home.
You know what's funny is, how just our human body, right? How it acclimates to situations and then it gets used to certain things, right? And you talk about training and every once in a while, you've got to mix things up because your body just becomes conditioned to the same thing. Well, so my recovery numbers were starting to like stay really low. Now, granted, when you're getting 4 to 4.5 hours of sleep, that hurts.
Yeah. But that was a good 4 hours.
But it was a good 4 hours. But here's what happened is my numbers were down. Well, we went out of town over break as well we had 2 nights. We were 2 nights that we were out, and I come home and like immediately, because I slept so bad and the bed was so bad, I come home and immediately I was from my sleep score and my Whoop through the roof. And it has been through the roof since. And I haven't done anything different. Yeah. But like your body's like, oh wait, it really is crappy everywhere else. Yeah. You get back on the Sleep Number, golden. Yeah. Actually, we're gonna sleep better tonight.
That's right.
It's really interesting how that's happened.
Yeah, so thank you to Sleep Number. And they're a big partner with the NFL. And speaking of NFL, we're heading into playoff time.
Yep.
And we've mentioned this before in the past. We'll mention it forever. Cowboys got a big game coming up. But really, there's a full weekend of all playoffs. And the best place to watch playoff football, hands down, if you're in the DFW area, head up north, up I-75 to Choctaw Casinos and Resort. They've got a sports bar up there called The League. And it is screen upon screen, massive televisions everywhere, the best food, the best drinks. So if you're a football fan at all, this weekend coming up is Christmas for the NFL fans.
Yeah.
I can't think of any better place than to go watch it up at Choctaw Casino.
I'm gonna reemphasize one of the things that you said. Food.
Yes.
It is so good.
Yeah, don't go up there if you're on 75 hard. But so our producer today, Will, he's on 75 hard right now. First time going through it. So he won't be able to go up there and enjoy the food, but he can enjoy everything else.
Ben did it last year, and he was just like, yeah. And
so that might actually be the best plug. I went up to a sports bar, unable to eat what I wanted, unable to drink any alcohol, and I still had the time of my life.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So appreciate them as well. I mentioned being out of town over New Year's. I went out of town for Christmas, but over New Year's as well. And we've made it a tradition. I've had a couple of buddies. It's kind of we call ourselves the Fab Five, if you will. And it's a group of 4 of my buddies. We've known each other since elementary, middle school. And, some friends you have growing up in high school and then college you kind of lose touch, or even college friends you lose touch after you graduate. Well, these buddies of mine, we've stayed. I mean, we're still. It's the kind of friends you get together with, and even if you've only talked once in the last 6 months, like it's like you never left. Yeah. It's those kind of buddies.
Yeah.
And so we made it a tradition back in 2010. So it's been, or maybe no, I'm sorry, 2012. So it's been about 10 years now.
Yeah.
We go to one of my buddies' lake houses every New Year's, jump in the water at midnight. Now we're taking kids with us, and that's added a different element. No. So Cooper and Case were sick this year, so I actually went by myself, which was a vacation in its own. And so it's funny though, because 2012, none of us had kids. We all had wives or girlfriends, but none of us had kids. Yeah. And so to think what it looked like then.
So you were there. Did they bring their families?
Everybody brought their families.
So you were just solo.
So I was thinking, like, this is awesome. I'll get to, sleep in.
No, just other kids. Other people's kids annoy you.
They have a big bunk room above their garage, and it's like 10 beds, just one massive open room. One of my buddies, his wife, and 4 kids, including a newborn, stayed in that room with me. So didn't really. It's all good though. I mean, it's fine. But
now tell us how you really feel, man. What's their names?
I slept with four kids under 5, so that's how it went.
Hold on. Wait.
Yeah. Slept in the same room as 4 kids under 5.
Not trying to get this podcast canceled. We're going into year 3, guys.
Seriously, we're just getting started. Anyway, I bring all that up to say, and I wanted to bounce this off of you because we talked about this before. Some of the best podcasts in the world are never recorded. It's just you and your best friends hanging out, talking about life. And one of the topics that came up while we were there, because we're all dads, we're all husbands, all these buddies of mine. And one of the topics that came up was, and we all have young kids. I think the oldest is 6.
Okay.
Cooper is the oldest. And so what's on our mind right now, obviously getting through the younger years, but it's starting to get, at least with my 6-year-old, he's starting to understand things more, and he's starting to grasp and ask deeper questions. We're still too young for drugs and sex and alcohol and all that, probably, hopefully, at 6. But it's definitely on the horizon, especially in 2022 when things seem to be moving younger and faster with technology. So the topic was just, and again, we didn't plan it. We just started talking, and it was, when do you start having these big conversations, these big subjects? Not only when, but how do you approach it? How can you start laying the groundwork at 6 years old so that when they're 10, 11, 12, and their buddy's got something on his phone that he shouldn't be looking at, and he's showing my son, and my son's got to decide what he's going to do in that moment.
Yeah.
So I know you, especially with your older kids, but even you are an outlier, you and your wife, Tiffany, y'all started these conversations earlier than anybody I know. And earlier than I was talked to about this. And so I wanted to bounce it off of you and almost not replicate that discussion, but maybe just bounce it off of you, this whole discussion of, like, when did you guys start? What was the impetus for starting? Did you plan it? Was it that something happened which led you to start talking about it? I don't know. I'm just curious how y'all want to.
So I mean, there's definitely different topics for different ages.
Sure.
My wife is not afraid, especially with our girls. I mean, she's a little bit more hesitant with the boys, so like she tags me in for a lot of those. but like from the like actual like biological aspect, we started our kids really young. And there are resources out there. But I think there's a line, right? Like that you've got to use because you know your kid, and you've got to understand, okay, like when do I start, how early, and then like how much information am I sharing with the kids? Because it's like borderline like, okay, we're going full woke. We're going to talk about everything, and you're going to like a 5-year-old doesn't have the ability to process like sexual identity. So like why are you forcing that conversation onto a child? So you've got to use discretion, and nobody knows your kid like you do, hopefully. And so like having those conversations really are going to be child specific. Like my daughter, my oldest, my wife took her through a like biology / sexuality like book. Anatomy. That's exactly the word that I was looking for.
Biology. You didn't say anything wrong. I'm just adding.
Yeah. So like I come home and she's, let's see, she's 4. And she's talking about like vaginas and uterus and stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on? And my wife is like, listen, would you rather her learn the correct like technical terms, or would you like her like to go to school and call it her ding dong until she's 13? You know what I mean? So, and I
laugh because we're behind, because we're still calling it wieners and hiney at my house.
Yeah, we call it coolie, like butt is coolie. We don't say your butt or your buttocks or anything. It's like coolie, which is like an Italian phrase apparently. It may not be. She could just be lying to me.
You're cussing in Italian. I don't even know.
But you've got to use discretion with your kids. But here's just kind of my encouragement for parents with young kids out there is don't ignore it. Because they're going to learn it. Do you want them to learn it from you and then go to school equipped to handle those conversations when other kids who have older siblings, who the older siblings taught them and nobody taught the older siblings the correct thing, and they heard it from school and brought it home, and now their second grader is walking around saying they want a blowjob and have no idea what it is. And so you've got to ask yourself that question. Do I want my kids to learn it from me the correct way, or do I want them to learn it from someone else the incorrect way? I would assume that every parent, and it doesn't have to be super formal. It doesn't have to be super serious. Like we took my daughter, it's a whole book series. And every year there's literally a book that is appropriate for that age, and talking about body parts and new sensations and new experiences and all these things that like are age appropriate all the way through.
What's that book called?
I'll get it.
Okay.
I'll get it for you. I don't want to.
I'm sure people listening would be interested.
Yeah. We'll put it out there. But it was phenomenal, and it had been recommended to her by a couple other parents that we really like look up to and what they've done with their kids, and having those conversations. The other thing is you're setting the stage for conversations later on. And then being comfortable talking about those things. If you make it uncomfortable talking about, your junior high daughter, going through that change, like, and you kind of shun it and make it feel gross to her. Like she's not going to come to you when she has a question.
Right.
Like that's one thing that like I love about my daughter's both of my daughter's relationship with my wife is like they talk to her about everything. Like no hiding anything, because like it's normal to have uncomfortable conversations with my wife. Like it's totally normal. Like I sent you a video the other day. We were out at a ranch, and
it was perfect.
Hey, you brought it up, right? You brought it up. You're like, hey, I'm thinking about this for the podcast, and I was like, oh yeah, it's totally perfect. Here's a prime example of what my family life looks like. And so we're out at my buddy's ranch, and they got a bunch of cattle, and we're feeding the cattle, and there's all these heifers and then females, and then this one Brahma bull, this big, massive bull. And like all the little kids are playing, and then you hear my wife, who's got a very distinctive voice, in the background of our friend that's filming, and she's like, so in the back are his balls, his testicles, right? So his testicles are in the back, and then his penis is in front. And that is like, these kids are just like out playing, right? And then my wife is talking to my oldest daughter about the anatomy of a bull.
Two observations, because I watched this video. One, the video is a sweet video of your son feeding this.
Yes,
this animal.
feeding this like big bowl with his hand, and like they love it, and they're all excited.
And in the background, you're exactly right. And you missed a quote, a direct quote. Those two things dangling. Oh, yeah. That's exactly what those two things dangling. The one in front is the penis. So to your point, that's exactly how she speaks to your kids.
And my daughter was locked in.
Yeah, your daughter. Kudos to your daughter. Sitting there, most kids would be just their skin would be crawling.
Oh my gosh.
I can't believe my mom's saying this, and she just kind of has this look on her face like, "That's my mom.
That's my mom." Yeah,
that's
talking
what
about
we do.
But there's just a level of trust there that like it's a safe place with my wife. Like like she's like outgoing, has no issues talking, making having hard conversations. But man, when our kids are in high school and there's serious conversations, right? Maybe there's a challenge, like a friend is struggling with something, or they were offered something, or they had a conversation, or whatever. Like we hope that they still feel comfortable enough to come to us and talk to us about those things. Mm-hmm. And then also too is equipping them just to be able to respond with certainty, as opposed to being manipulated with like false information. Like, oh, hey, try this. Like, it's good for you. It's organic, or it's that. Like all these things that like kids try to do, like within peer pressure. Like if you have the conversation about drugs with your kids, like our kids are getting exposed earlier and earlier. Mm-hmm. But if they know what it is and what it does, and our family's stance on it, like it's not going to be that hard for them to say no. Like, I've learned about this. I know what this is. I know what it does. I know the impacts. I know the side effects. I know the consequences. I know all of those because we've talked through them, as opposed to like for the first time hearing it.
Yeah. So,
and then, I mean, the other thing too, like you talk to like, especially junior high, which my oldest daughter's going to be in junior high next year. Like.
And junior high is 7th grade?
7th and 8th. Okay. Yeah. So I grew up, it was just 7th and 8th, but here in the DFW.
Yeah, when I grew up, it was 6th, 7th, 8th. Yep.
And so, but like with cell phones, right? And what kids are sending to each other, like images, mm-hmm. like those are things that I worry about, the pressure that young girls are being put on them from immature, adolescent, puberty ravaged young boys. Mm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, and there's things that are forever. Like if something is sent, it is forever. And so again, if there's pressure, like we want our daughter to be able to come to us and say, hey, this boy is asking for this. Like, as opposed to like trying to like solve it herself with 12 years of experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big one, obviously, is that type of request seems to be happening. You know, when you and I were growing up, it was the beginning of the internet age, at least for me it was. And so it was still fairly difficult to get your hands on stuff you shouldn't be looking at.
Yeah, you
had to dial up, you had all that. So like, and it had to be on your computer at home. It wasn't like you could just hide it somewhere.
Well, see, I was pre that. Like really, like even
you were like magazines, I guess. Then.
Yeah, like that's what magazines and videos.
Right.
Like buddies that's like dads had magazines. They'd like bring them to school, or like an actual like VHS tape. Mm. Like the computer thing, I guess maybe like high school.
Yeah, I think for me it was like middle schoolish.
Yeah,
late middle school.
Yeah, so that would line up, and so but
now it's you pull out a phone.
Yeah,
and guess what? 12-year-olds have phones now. 10-year-olds have phones now, and we talked about it in the Coddling of the American Mind when they allowed 13-year-olds to be able to have Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts. Now it's gone from the big stuff, which it's all big, but the big stuff of sending stuff that you shouldn't be sending. But now it's even, especially for girls, that book talks about, it's comparing yourself.
Yeah.
Looking at these pretty 19-year-olds who have these perfect bodies, which are fake, by the way, on the screen. They're touched up and airbrushed and whatever. Now it's just that comparison game. Yeah. So not only am I being pressured to send stuff I shouldn't send at an earlier age, I'm also now comparing myself.
Or here's an even more potentially more dangerous scenario is you now have access to things that are highly illegal to have and possess, that you can literally just search. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get into it more, but there was a very public figure whose college son was arrested because there was a couple images that he had on his computer that he found online and didn't know that they were illegal, but I mean, literally arrested. So again, the conversations of like, what should I search? What can I search? Because when you're talking about like high school and below, is the maturity and intellectual capacity to make wise decisions is limited.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the daunting thing. My kids are young, but it's something I need to start thinking about. And it is the obvious probably is where you start, it's conversations early, it's restriction on phones, it's, regulating, screen time. It's those obvious things, but it's the less obvious, I think, that keeps me up, which is buddies at school. I have no control over what those parents are telling their kids. Yeah. And so if a buddy of my son's is like, hey, check this out, check out what I saw. Now, how does my son react? Again, you said it earlier, it's him understanding our stance on that, understanding, and it's because of conversations we have earlier. I'm also wondering out loud, and again, I've never done this before, and parents of older kids are probably like, that won't work. Don't even try it. But I'm also wondering out loud, it's got to be secondary principles too that have an effect. And we talked about this a little bit. I got to think if I can teach him things, the big stuff about sex, drugs, alcohol, those conversations, but also teaching secondary things that I think could have a bleed over effect, which is talking about peer pressure, talking about, delayed gratification even. And, we're wired in a way that we need pleasure now, which is, I could argue, the source of why we get into drugs, alcohol, sex, all that.
Which kids deal with even more so than us as adults. Why? Because parents now, what do we want to do? We want to make our kid happy.
Right.
Oh, you want that?
Yep.
All right, we'll get it.
We'll give it to you.
You're not gonna. Very few kids these days are working, saving up their own money, going out, doing chores or going around the neighborhood. Like, remember it was a cool deal to like sell lemonade? Like now it's like an anomaly to see like a lemonade stand. I mean, like going out and working, earning it themselves and then getting it. Now kids are like, what do you mean? Mom will just order it on Amazon. We'll be here tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're learning about the intricacies of money right now with my 6-year-old. And he does a chore and he gets rewarded as being, now there's some school of thoughts, well, that's just, to get to live in your house, he should just be able to contribute. But we're trying to teach him, this is how you earn. This is how you earn a reward, and what do you do with that reward? You can go spend it on toys if you want, but then you're not going to have anything left. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if those type of lessons will also bleed over.
I think so.
Into the big stuff,
right? You talk about like peer pressure. What about like protection, like protecting others? So like, what if an 8-year-old, second, third grader, and he sees, say, another boy doing something inappropriate to a girl or bullying somebody else, right? Having the wherewithal to be like, hey, listen, I know I've had this conversation with my parents. Like, that's something that is not okay, and I need to let somebody know. Or, like, one thing we talk about with my son a lot is, he has a twin sister, is you have a role as a protector for your sister. When you're at school and if somebody tries to hurt her, like, we want you to be able to stand up and protect her and step in. I mean, she's strong. She's probably stronger than he is right now. But like also having the hard conversations about like what's okay, what's not, and then what is your role and what is your job? What are you called to do in those tough situations, as opposed to just being a spectator like much of our country, just watch it happen and film it. Yeah. Right? No, like stepping in and making an impact and trying to like help a situation.
Yeah, another thing we're talking, and there's so much out there, and you want to be proactive as opposed to reactive. You want to be playing offense as a parent as opposed to playing defense. Unfortunately, I think a lot of parents, because we're so focused on what we do and we're pursuing career success, our kids kind of get the second, at least that's for me. A lot of times they get my secondary attention. Yeah. My main attention is on what I want to do. Yeah. But what I'm realizing over time is they need a lot more of my attention than it's going to take a much more proactive. Another thing is selfishness. Yeah. And again, what's the source of a lot of these things? It's selfishness. It's wanting to fulfill my needs and my needs only. And so you think about my boys requesting from a girl a picture or something that she shouldn't be sending. What's at the root of that? It's selfishness.
Yeah.
I have a need. You need to fulfill that need for me. Same thing with drinking. Same thing with drugs. I have a need. I want to fulfill this short-term pleasure, and this thing is going to get that to me.
Yep.
And so selfishness is another conversation that we have in our house of, I didn't make that mess, Dad. Doesn't matter. You, as part of a contributing member of this family, we all do things that help the group.
Yeah.
And so just because you didn't make that mess doesn't mean that you're not responsible for cleaning it up. That's just that's the role you play in this family. And so I think having those conversations early has been helpful. Again, he doesn't get it the first time or the second time. It's going to take, I think that's maybe another thing that us parents do is
I was literally just about to go there.
We would want things to stick the first time.
Yeah.
And so it's all about the follow-up.
Oh, dude.
Just like in sales, just like in anything, it's all the follow-up.
Yeah.
And so you can tell them one thing once, it's not going to stick one time. It's going to be a constant repetition. Y'all
just
were at
ask your kids to pick up toys.
Yeah.
See how many times it takes you to ask them to do that.
You had the twins at my son's birthday party.
Yeah.
This past weekend, and you had to repeatedly.
Oh my gosh!
And I know you've said this a million times. You had to repeatedly say thank you.
A million times.
Say thank you. Which, by the way, I have a side story real quick.
Yeah.
That you're not gonna like.
Oh gosh! I swear. Do I need to go pull them out of school? Put my hands on them.
So we got home with all the presents, and this is just a side tangent that like I said, that you won't like. But we got home with all the presents. We're going through them, and he's opening them, and we're writing down who got us what, and what the gift that y'all got, the little Nerf bow and arrow. I go, hey bud, this is from Rocco, and so every other gift, hey, this is from Hudson, or this is from whoever. And he's like, oh great, whatever. And I said, hey bud, this is from Rocco and C, and he goes, ooh.
Oh, stop. Stop. Yeah, I'm gonna go put my hands on
his ears perked up when he heard Sia. So.
It was so funny. Did you saw his reaction when they took the picture?
Oh, absolutely.
Or Sia's reaction. Yeah. Like they were standing next to each other. First, like Cooper was on the edge, and then the twins were. I was like, no, put Cooper in the middle. And I was messing with her. And I was like, Sia, put your arm around him. Put your arm around him. Oh, the look that she gave me. She's like, Dad, I swear, if you say it again, Dad, I swear.
So you just redid all the good that we're talking about in this episode of how you nurture your children and have these conversations. He was forcing a
I'm telling you, sarcasm is a sign of intelligence. If you can get them to understand and read people through sarcasm, they're just going to be more equipped to be successful.
But anyway, I don't know where I forget where I was.
To your point on like wanting your kids, and that's how we parent these days, right? Is if it doesn't work, forget it. It's too hard.
It's as much of a chore for me to get my kids to clean up their mess as it is for them to clean up the mess.
Yes.
And maybe even more so.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is you do need to recognize victories, and you do need to recognize times. Like I took the boys to dinner Friday night, and we went to a spot. And one thing that I kind of just overlook because I always do it, but like both of my boys know, and they do this 90% of the time, which is like, I'm saying this now and I'm like, dang, I'm like super proud. But they always hold the door for people. Always. Like they will always hold the door. They walk in, they open the door, and they let you go through. Like nothing drives me crazier than like boys that just open the door, let it close behind them, and walk through.
We're trying to learn that right now. It's hard.
Nothing drives me crazier. And so like that's a big deal. And sometimes they'll fight over who gets to hold the door for the people that are walking behind. So like recognize that, one, it's going to take time. Like it just takes forever. Like as an adult, I still don't always like wipe down the shower door, get all the water droplets off, or like I don't always put my clothes away the second that, that they come out of the dryer and fold them up. Like there's still things that like we as adults don't do. So how can you expect young kids to get it and understand it? And
well, I think that's the point is you set the standard for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
What do they see you doing is going to bleed over into what do they do.
Right. And like, in my oldest son, there's times I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid, like, it's like he doesn't ever listen. But then we'll get places and then you'll see him interact with other people. It doesn't do it with parents, but with other people, it's like, okay, like he's looking servers and waiters in the eye saying, sir, can I please have this? Thank you so much. Like going through that conversation and doing it, you're like, dang. And then he like punches his sister under the table. And then I'm like, you come on. Yeah. You know, but like we as parents, it's hard to recognize like those little victories, but it's just like, guys, like we're sculptors out of a rock, and it's just take chips and chips and chips and chips and chips until hopefully you build this like great statue, this beautiful piece of artwork that your child can potentially be. But look, if you just like expect to take a sledgehammer to it a couple times, it's never gonna stick.
Yeah, it's also the balance of, you know, teaching them these things and being super hands-on, but also hands-off enough to where they make some mistakes as well.
That's good. That's a good point.
The scary thing is you don't want to make a massive mistake that changes the trajectory of their life at 16.
Yeah.
So again, there's some give and take here, and it's more of an art as opposed to a science.
Yeah.
I would love nothing more than a black and white, here's how to do it, here's what you do.
Do it, get it
done.
Go. Yeah.
I would love nothing more than that. Unfortunately, and you said it to start, I've got 2 kids, a third on the way. Each one of those kids is going to demand a different approach, different messaging, different ways that I go about delivering that.
100%. And an example is like Gia, my oldest. You can talk to her about like very detailed anatomy and stuff like that, and like she's just like learning, soaking it in, like asking like very intelligent questions. And then like you say like puberty to my 8-year-old, and he loses it for like 2 minutes, and you can't see, and he can't even hold it together. I mean, it is so funny and different, and so different times. Like he's not ready to talk about like the nuances of like a lot of that stuff, but you still have to deliver it at a point and in a way that he does comprehend. And even if he does laugh, like sometimes you gotta recognize like he's gonna be more work. Yeah. Like we're going to have to be more intentional about it, and we're going to have to figure out how it actually gets through to him and actually sticks.
And there's probably other subject matters that he is ready to take on more so than maybe you know, maybe it is discipline that he can really focus on at this age. And then the more sexual type stuff comes in. Again, there's just so many. There's a wide variety of topics and issues that we're going to have to face at some point.
Yep.
I think to me, it's just how can I get ahead of as many of these things as possible?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to get ahead of everything, and I'm not going to be able to control everything. Yeah. That's another thing is letting go of some of that and just trusting that what you've taught them their first 10 years of life is sticking. To your point, you tell your son these things at home over and over and over. You don't think it's really sticking, and then you go out and he applies it. And he does it.
Yeah.
So there's some of that trust factor there as well of, no, it is taking a hold, and it is working, and it is registering in his mind.
Yeah, I think for the tougher conversations, one of the things that you just need to recognize like windows of opportunity to start the conversation. Anytime you feel like your stomach kind of like turning a little bit, like, oh, this is awkward, this is hard, you need to listen to that feeling and say, this is probably one of those opportunities.
Yeah.
Because like you said earlier, it's like we want to be proactive. We want to be on offense about this stuff, and we don't want to like have to explain everything. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but like you don't want to have to like explain it for the first time when they come home from school asking a question.
Yeah. You would hate the first time you ever talk about it is when they're in tears.
Yes.
At home.
Yeah.
You know, because some big thing happened.
Exactly.
Now, again, maybe that's a great opportunity to teach, but hopefully at least, you know, you've at least broached the subject.
I was going to say, you've at least started the conversation, and they know.
Because pain's unavoidable. Yeah. You're going to have they're going to screw up. They're kids.
I know me personally, I was way too embarrassed to talk to my parents about anything.
Me too. Yeah.
So I would just keep it in.
Yeah.
And unless like my parents kind of like forced it, which didn't happen a ton, I just kept it in. And I never talked about it.
Yeah, I was very fortunate growing up that the friend group, my closest friend group growing up, all came from similar families and similar values that I did.
Right.
And so alcohol, for instance, was never a temptation for me because the best friends that I had in the world and the people I spent 90% of my time with, it wasn't a temptation for them. Yeah. So it's not like we were going out and seeking. Now that's just one example. Again, Do I want to rely on and hope that I get lucky that my kids all have great friend groups? Yes, I hope they do.
I mean, yeah.
But that doesn't take away my responsibility to have these discussions and teach these lessons early on.
Yeah.
Because maybe my son is the leader of the group and he's the one that sets the tone.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to approach it and assume
as it should be, yeah.
That he's going to have to go into these scenarios is that he's the leader.
Yeah.
He's the one that steps up and sets the tone. Not follows and sits back and waits for his buddy to be the one that steps, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Like do you want the kid that like joins in on other kids making fun of somebody?
Not at all.
Putting them down? Or do you want the kid that's like, hey, he's not here. Like that's not we don't need to be talking about that. Like that's not kind. Like we want the second kid. We don't want the kid that's just like part of the group and just goes with it and doesn't stand for anything. Like we want to be the kid that's like, look, this is what I believe in. And look, if what you believe is different than everybody else and like that's what you're trying to teach to your kid, you're the parent.
Yeah.
That's your decision.
Right.
But like you don't want other people making decisions, putting your kids into circumstances, situations that they just go with because they haven't been encouraged to take a stand for whatever they believe in. If they don't believe in anything, then what are they going to stand up against?
Yeah, I think my takeaway from not only this conversation, but the ones I had with my buddies and just previous conversations that you and I had is this is going to be a proactive deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to be proactive about this as opposed to reactive. And it's something, it's going to take work.
Yeah.
It's not like I can just sit back and expect him to be, to learn this on his own. Again, there's an element of that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is having these discussions early on.
How many times are we in the car? Are you in the car with just the boys?
Honestly, not that often.
Okay, so you're a terrible father.
So I'm a terrible father.
You're in that category. Okay. I'm just kidding. But like
percentage-wise, not as much as my wife. But
no. Yeah. Oh, same. But like you're coming home from sports, coming home from picking up whatever, right? Whatever it may be. I mean, how many opportunities there are, and like just imagine, right? Like men, just stereotypically, we are not great at conversations. Just stereotypically, imagine a dad setting the tone and just asking his son like how school was, how his friends are, which friends he likes. Like we shouldn't have to like go to our wife and look at our wife and be like, hey, who are his friends? Or what's his teacher's name? Or what's this? Like imagine starting there, just asking questions to your kids. Like sometimes it's literally the best conversations I ever have. I mean, dying. Like some of the things that come out of these kids when you just start to ask questions. Yeah. Like imagine, and I'm speaking mainly father to son because I think we struggle with that as a culture. Imagine just setting the tone of having open dialogue. It doesn't have to always be super important, like pivotal conversations. It can be, hey, bud, any girls that you're friends with at school? Are there any boys there that like the same girls? Are any of them mean to girls? Or, sports, which kids are the best, on your team? Are they nice? Which ones do you think are leaders? Start having just like basic conversations to just set the tone that like, hey, this is normal, as opposed to like, okay, my dad's coming in to talk to me. He never talks to me. Like something's really serious. What's going on? And these kids are on defense, right? Yeah. Just set the tone with like actually having conversations. You would be blown away at what you learn about your kids.
Yeah, and another takeaway for me is the personal discipline. Myself, meaning what am I portraying to my sons? Yeah. How am I acting? How am I treating their mother? How am I treating my body? How am I treating myself? Am I, getting drunk on the weekend and eating terrible food? Yeah. Or am I taking care of my body? Am I getting up early? Am I disciplined in my approach to everything? And that bleeds over, in my opinion, as well to your kids. I already noticed my boys, both of them, we have the home gym, wanting to go out there and just hang out with me while I'm working out, and they see that. Yep. That's the main reason I got a home gym. Is yes, personally it's easier and it helps me out. But I wanted them to see me work hard. Yeah. I want them to see me struggle. I want them to see me push through. And so getting my 6-year-old into training is in my opinion is huge. Yeah. It does a lot of good things for his physical health, but to me it's the mental aspect of it. Yeah. This hurts, this is painful, push through anyway. And I think that translates to a lot of these things that we're talking about, a lot of these big conversations that we're going to have.
Yeah, there's celebration around that specific type of pain and discomfort, and that's a good thing. You brought up the one thing about like how you treat their mom. Like with girls, dads, if you want to avoid your daughter, and this is super cliche and a lot of people say it, but like if you want to avoid your daughter like falling into a trap, being taken advantage of, dating some, piece of trash dude, you don't have to walk her through the checklist of the things that you expect the guy that she dates to have.
Right.
Like she'll know it. She already knows what the checklist is because of how she sees you treat their mom. So like it's a pretty simple deal. So be very aware of that. Be very aware of your interactions with your spouse in the house, or just all the time.
That's right.
It's not only, hey, I'm respecting her, but you're respecting your kids and what kind of standards they set for what a marriage should look like.
That's right. So, I mean, it's daunting. It's intimidating at times, but I tell people, and I don't think I'm just trying to trick myself. I really do believe this. And I mentioned this before. A coworker of ours a couple months back said, man, I don't know how people raise kids these days because her kids are a lot older. Yeah. He said, I don't know how parents are going to do it. And yes, there is a way, there is a lot of aspects, there's a lot of big scary things out there, but I see it as a challenge, and I see it as something that I'm excited to take on. Again, that might be naive, and it's, everything sounds good in the air conditioning, the night before the storm, but I am excited that I get the opportunity. I've been gifted the opportunity to raise children in potentially the hardest
today
culture in history from the standpoint of the challenges that they face.
Mental challenge, societal challenges. Yeah.
Not physical. Obviously we're not dealing with, disease and death.
Disease, war, all that stuff. Yeah.
But it's
don't want to downplay, those
spiritual and mental warfare.
Those kids that were born in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Did you see that thing Rogan posted?
Yes.
This is the craziest deal. Yeah. Like somebody born in like 1906.
And all the things that they've seen.
All the things that they've seen in life.
Yep. Yes. Anybody born basically when we were born.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And after has not really seen anything major in their life.
Yeah.
And so, the warfare is different.
Yeah.
It's mental.
Yeah.
It's a lot more because we're losing senses of purpose.
What was it? U.S. Vietnam was what, 60,000 Americans that lost their lives in Vietnam?
I don't remember.
And that was awful.
Yeah.
Like awful. But now you go back to like World War I and World War II, the deadliest war of all time. I mean, that's insane.
Well, think about how we treated the vid, because if we say the full word, we'll get banned on YouTube.
Yeah. You'll have
think about
banner.
how we treated that. And again, serious, not downplaying it, but the Spanish flu and how many people that killed.
Yes.
I mean, and just how we approached this whole last 3 years.
Yeah.
Again, it's just, you only know, and again, this is the most obvious statement ever, and actually Joe Rogan says this all the time, the hardest thing you've ever done is the hardest thing you've ever done.
Yeah.
So that's all you have to compare it to.
Yeah.
If the pandemic was the hardest thing you've ever been through, yes, from some people, the perspective, that wasn't that big of a deal, but for others, that's the worst thing that they've ever been through.
Yeah.
And so, again, there's a lot of challenges in 2022. You're going to deal with a lot of different things that maybe our parents didn't have to deal with in raising us. 2023, golly. However, I'm excited to take on that challenge. I'm excited that we're the guinea pig generation. We're going to get to raise a group of kids, if we do it the right way, if we're proactive,
be different.
That are going to be different. Yeah. And they're going to set up their kids in a much better way than potentially what we're headed right now. Right. And so that's up to us. That's up to how we act personally. It's how we raise our kids. And so anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, please help us by sharing the podcast. The easiest, best way, the best marketing for us is by you texting this to a friend. If you've got some friends out there that are young parents and they may find this conversation helpful, go shoot it to them. We're going to start a series. It may not be next week, but hopefully the week after. We're going to dive into the question, is America the greatest country in the world?
Ooh.
And we're going to dive into the different components that lead into creating a great nation, which is, education, wealth, all that good thing. Yeah, Tyler's wearing a nice little hoodie today. So hopefully, or that'll be a fun. I think that'll be a fun conversation because again, Darren said it all the time. We've all said it. We believe it. Yeah. This is the greatest country in the world. But I want to dig into the numbers. What do the statistics say?
I like it.
And as part of that, if you want to go listen to an expert, somebody who really knows what they're talking about, Joe Rogan just released an episode with a guy. His name's Peter.
Is he The Economist?
Yes, it literally just came out on Saturday. What's the guy's name?
So we're going to be doing a podcast on a podcast. So
no, our discussion to be different. But this guy, actually, a lot of discussion is negative on the United States. This guy actually had. It actually made me hopeful.
I saw some clips.
It actually made me hopeful.
And he was like super, super positive. We have the largest supply. We have we're the largest exporter of food. We're the largest. Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually very hopeful. His name is Peter Zeihan, Zeihan. And so I actually went in with a bias into this series we're not the greatest country in the world. But his conversation.
Who's better though?
Actually, well, and again, we're gonna dive into education, and I know for a fact we're not number one on a lot of things. Yeah,
we've known that. We've known that for a while.
There's a lot of components where we're not number one, but there's a lot of components where we are. Yeah. So anyway,
I'm just like, what other country would you say it would be better to live and raise a family in?
Just off the top of my head, again, before I dive into all the statistics, I know London or the UK has been voted as one of the greatest cities in the world. I mean, it just depends on what you value. It depends on what you value. And again, we're obviously biased. This is where we've lived our whole life. But like my parents, if you gave my dad the opportunity, he'd live in Brazil for the rest of his life. Yeah. There's a lot of issues down there, but there's a lot of good things about it too. So again, I think it's not like we're going to come with a conclusion necessarily, but we're just going to go through the statistics and just see what it says.
You might not.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that'll be fun to dive into that and have some good discussion on that. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it again. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Excited about a big 2023.
That's right.
Thank you guys for coming along the ride with us. I'll see you next week.